This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. We come to you every day, quite frankly, with short business episodes, short private equity episodes, interviews with business and private equity leaders, and then periodically with what we think of as irreverent or maybe irrelevant episodes that are just a piece of a part of life that is, ridiculous in some form or another. Today is one of those episodes. Today's discussion is taking advice from highly confident people. So one of the things in life is you have to know where to take advice from and where not to take advice from. I recently had this eye injury, retinal surgery, and for anybody that's not familiar, retina detachment surgery is no fun. You have to sit face down for about a week, which if you're hyperactive, like many of us are, is quite challenging. Then it's about a month to 2 month recovery till you can really do all the things you want to do in any way, shape, that you want to do them. In fact, it's almost worse than that because a few months after the detached retina surgery, you got to do cataract surgery because it speeds that up. And that's when your vision really gets back to clear and where you really want it to be. So sort of living with being able to see out of one eye and not the other eye is sort of today's subject. And one of my closest friends who I love to death is a very, very confident person. I'm not going to name his name in this episode. I did in the last episode. But he had the same surgery a couple months before me for a detached retina. And there's a whole story behind that. And he's one of my favorite people, but he's also a very confident person. So when somebody's had the same exact thing as you, very similarly, you're going to lean on that person for advice. And this can be challenging when you're dealing with a very, very confident person. So I'll ask this person, at what point did you really feel comfortable driving? And he'll preface the response with, well, here's the deal. I'm a really good driver, Scott. And so I don't know if this will apply to you. And, you get into this pattern of these types of things. You ask him, so what about golf? When can I golf again? And again, you'll get the same thing. It's like he's President Biden or President Trump. Well, I have a 6 handicap, Scott, and you're much worse than that. So I don't know if it applies to you. I'll ask him about electric biking, and I'll get really the same kind of answer. And I love the guy, but a very confident person. And he'll explain to me, well, here's the deal. One, I didn't know that you electric biked or biked. But two, if you electric bike, don't tell anybody. That's embarrassing because he's, of course, Mr. Serious Biker and stuff like that. And you get this all the way down the line in terms of asking for advice. It's very helpful when you're dealing with someone with extreme confidence. You have to temper that taking of advice. And I'll just give a few other examples of this for other areas of life. Like for example, I'm not going to ask a billionaire for investment advice because I can't take those same risk. I can't do the same kinds of things. I can't be as liquid in certain ways as that billionaire and so forth. I can't take advice from, Novak Djokovic because there's almost something I can learn from Novak Djokovic because he plays at such a different level, has such a different IQ for the game, is so much more brilliant. Now, I could take advice from someone like Josh Layton, who plays at a different level, but not such a different level than Novak Djokovic. I might not be able to take advice from Mitch Granger, who's a different level athlete, or Ed Granger, but Josh, I might be able to. Corky on serving, no, because he's such a brilliant teacher. I don't know if I could do it. A few other examples along those lines. I could take great advice from my brother-in-laws, Bob Wise, Glenn Zweig, on relationship advice. Both of them done an unbelievable job with family. Andy Paulson on staying centered as a business leader, as a professional, just being a great person. I can take advice from him. Another example where I couldn't take advice is one of my favorite people in the world, and no offense, is Jim Field on strategic golf. And that may be the case with Mark Blum as well. Both hit a big ball, bigger than I do. And Mark actually has got his handicap down to remarkable levels, a remarkable golfer, and can play at a highly intelligent level when he wants to. Jim struggles with that kind of impulse control, so I'm not sure I'd take advice from him. But what he has done is raised a wonderful family, so could take advice from him there. I might be a little bit here on a tangent in terms of this issue, but the real concept is taking advice from highly confident people. Reminds me of going to paddle camp years ago, and Rick Smith could lament on this as well, how there were a series of athletes that might have been delusional in their skill set as to what it was, and then taking advice from those people who all think that they are the greatest that ever played. In any event, this is a fun podcast. I get to touch on, in some ways, a couple different people in one fell swoop. Thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. I know this is childish. Come back to us regularly for true business advice, true private equity episodes, great interviews with true business and private equity leaders. And I hope you enjoy the irreverent episodes as well. Thank you for listening.